If statements that you've been working with are great for if we're comparing two things, where you say, hey, if this, then do this, but if not, then do the other thing, right? So that's kind of comparing two things. It's either this or not, right? So we're comparing kind of two things. But sometimes there's more to that. You might have a list of like three or four or five things where it's like, hey, well, if this, then do that, but if this, then do that, if this, then do that, and kind of, you might want to do some more things. That is possible, and one of the easiest ways to do it is to nest your if statements. That just means take an if statement and plop it into the other one. So if this, then this. Well, if this, then that. And if this, then the other thing. We're going to keep them kind of simple, and we'll only do two. We'll put an if statement inside of an if statement. That's all we'll be doing. And I'll show you how to do that. So, firstly, here's just a regular if statement, right? If this. So, if a condition. So, if like cell A1 is equal to cell A2 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like if it's less than 5 or whatever, right? We're used to this. If this, then do this, right? What to do if it's true. But if not, then do this. That's the three parts just a regular if statement. If this is true, then do this. But if it's not true, then do this other thing, right? So the way we're going to do that is instead of say, so if this is true, then do this. But if it's not true, what should we do? We're going to take this, what to do if it's not true. And what we want to do if it's not true is another if statement. So we're just checking multiple things. We would say, okay, well, if this is true, then all good, do this. But if it's not true, then I want you to check something else. I want you to look and say, well, what about if this? Right? So if this is true, then yeah, go ahead and do this part. But if it's not true, then I want you to check something else before you just kind of go off, right? So instead of just do things, we're going to check another thing. And what we're going to do then is write another if statement here, take another if statement like this, and just plug it in right here. If it's not true, then do another if statement, and you just plug it in for if what happens if it's not true. If it is true, do this. If it's not, run the next if statement. That's all that's happening. So it kind of looks like this. All right, I wrote this out in general. If condition one, so if this is true, then, so, maybe I might say A1 is A2, right? If that's true, then just do this. That's fine. But if it's not true, we're going to put another if statement in. So that if statement has the three things just like any other norm statement. So I would say if this is not true, if condition one is not true, then I want you to try another thing. If condition two, say, well, maybe A1 is equal to A3, right? If A1 is equal to A2, then do this. Well, if not, then look, if A1 is equal to A3, I want you to do this. What to do if condition two is true. And then again, if not, then do something else, right? And this is only going to happen if the condition one and condition two are not true. Whoops. Yeah. So what to do if neither condition one nor condition two are true? So if this is true, it'll do this. And then if this is true, it'll do this. And if neither are true, it'll do this. It's just nesting. So you're just taking another if statement and putting it in here for what to do if the first condition isn't true. Let's look at some examples. So here's our first example. We're just going to have a list of students and their percentage grade in a class. And then we want this to automatically calculate their letter grade. But this is kind of weird situation for the letter grades here. There's only three. Like I said, we're keeping it simple. I could make it A, B, C, D, but then that would be a lot of nesting. So we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it to three. And we're going to make this a weird situation. 90 to 100%, I want to be an A. 70% to 89%, I want to be a C. And then anything below 70 will be an F. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to start off with an if statement. We're going to say, okay, if this grade right here is greater than or equal to 90, then return an A right here. And A is a letter, right? Like a word. So I have to put that in parentheses. If it's not greater than or equal to 90, then what should I do? Now, I've got two other things that need to happen, right? I can't just say an F, right? Or say a C. I need to check for another thing. Because if it's above 90, then it's an A. But if it's between 70 and 89, then it's a C. So I would say if the letter grade or the percentage grade right here is greater than 70, that should be a greater than or equal to actually, because 70% is still a C. Then give me a C. And then if it's not greater than 70, just give it an F. Right? And I got to close two parentheses here because I opened two, right? Here's the first open, here's the second open, here's the first close, here's the second close. So all that happened here was I'm saying if the grade is greater than or equal to 90, then return an A. If it's greater than or equal to 70, return a C. If it's neither of those things, then return an F. Boom. And then it'll ask me to autofill. Yeah, go for it. You can see I can put different scores in here and it works. Now, you might say, one thing you want to consider when you're looking at this is greater than or equal to 70. Well, 100 is greater than or equal to 70, right? So how does it know that it should be an A and not a C? That's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask, and I hope that you did ask it because it means you're thinking about it, right? If I say that if this is greater than or equal to 70, then give me a C, how does it know that 100 should be an A? Well, that's because it stops on the wherever it finds a condition that works, it stops. So it always goes in order because the first thing I said was to check if it's greater than or equal to 90. And if it is, give me an A. And it stops. It doesn't even get to this part. If it's greater than or equal to 90, it'll do this and then it stops. Okay? But if it checked this and it's not, then it moves on. And it says, okay, well, what if it's greater than or equal to 70? Then it'll give me a C and then it'll stop if that works. But if it's not, then it'll do the last thing. Okay, so it goes in order. All right. So I wouldn't want to put this first. If I put greater than or equal to 70, give me a C first, it would stop right there and it wouldn't know about the A's. So I purposefully put the A first because it's going to happen first. So if it's greater than or equal to 90, it'll give me an A and it'll stop. It doesn't even care about the rest of it. And that's how it works. Check out this second example. This is just a funny example that I made up. It doesn't really mean anything. It just wants to show you an example of this. So I made some data validation here about someone that we're inviting to a party. Here are the people we invited. Are they attending? They would come in here and they would select yes, no, or maybe, right? That's three things. So you could say yes, and look, it says turn up. Let's go. You're coming to the party. Or you could say no, I'm not, and it'll call them a party pooper. Or you could say maybe, and then I'll say so indecisive and criticize them, right? It's just an example. It's not for anything. It's just an example so that we can practice. Okay, how did I do that? Let's erase these. Basically, what we're doing is I would say there's three options over here, right? I put in some data validation, and there's only three options that could be in here. It could be yes, or no, or maybe. So I'm just going to go in and say if this cell is yes, and remember that it's a word, so it has to go in quotations there. If it's yes, then say turn up, an exclamation mark. And words, of course, have to go in quotations. And then if it's not a yes, what should I do? Well, then the next thing is to, again, I've got to check to know if it's no or maybe, right? If it's no or maybe. So let's say if this says no, that is equal to no, then call them a party pooper. Okay, and then if it's not yes, then it moves on to this. If it's not no, then it'll move on to this. And I'll say if not, then that means the last thing is they said maybe. So I'll say so indecisive. Criticize them because it's funny to me. Those parentheses, that's the first one. You can see it highlighted it. The first time I closed it, it highlighted this parentheses. Watch, when I add the next parentheses, it'll highlight the next one and be like, okay, now I've got them both closed. So here's the first open, here's the second open, here's the first close, here's the second close. If you don't have the right parentheses, it's going to give you an error. So it's good to check. And it'll suggest it for me, right? Check. And there you go. No's get a party pooper, maybes get a so indecisive, and yeses get a turn up. That's all we did. So again, reading through it. If this cell says yes, then say turn up. If this cell says no, then say party pooper. And if neither, then say so indecisive. There you go. And you're just going to go into your assignment, and there's two situations here. We're used to practicing this by now, right? So John's dog kenneling service decided to update their food policy, and they're going to do it like this. So for dogs who are 2 years or younger, 2 years on the dot or younger, then they get 3 scoops of food. If they're 2 to 8 years, they get 2 scoops. And if they're over 8 years, they don't need as much food, they get 1 scoop. Right? So that's what it's doing. So you can see when I change this, up 2 still gets 3, right? On 2 gets 3. But as soon as I go to 3, it's going to go down to 2. 5, whatever, will get 2. As soon as I go over 8, or it looks like, yeah, as soon as 8 or over, I guess this should say 8 or over. I'll change that. It should say 8 years or more gets 1 scoop. So as soon as it gets to 8, it jumps down to 1 scoop. But 7, as soon as it gets to 8, it should jump down to 1 scoop. And anything over that should be at 1. So you're going to write a nested if formula. It needs to be nested, right? Because there's 3 things. So nest some ifs in there and make this column tell you how many scoops of food. This one is, again, kind of out of context, but William wants to make a table that's going to do mathematical operations. What you want to do is create a drop-down list here, add, subtract, multiply. And then in this column, you're going to make it that it's going to add, subtract, or multiply the 2 numbers here, right? So I'm going to say subtract. So it's going to subtract these 2 numbers. I'm going to say multiply. It's going to multiply those 2 numbers, and you can see it'll do it for whatever. If I want to add those, I want to subtract those, or multiply these. This column's going to do that based on what it says to do. And it's using these 2 numbers here. So I'm multiplying 8 times 9. I'm subtracting 8 minus 9. I'm, adding 8 plus 9 will give you the answer here. So you're going to have to nest some if statements here to make that work. When you're done, you want to submit 2 things. You want to first submit a screenshot of the notes you took when you were watching this video. They should be at the bottom of your if statement notes. So make sure we got notes on nesting if statements there. Screenshot those, submit them, and then you're also going to submit the link to the spreadsheet that you just did.